Hey, welcome to the live stream. We got a lot to get into today. There's a lot of news to cover. First, I'm going to answer some of the previously submitted questions, but if you have a question, drop it in the chat and I'll get to it. I'll look at those. The first thing I really want to look at, though, is the 2-page resume. We're still under a hiring freeze all the way until October 15th, as of right now. So the very next day, October 16th, the hiring freeze could potentially be lifted. And then we should see a lot more positions on usajobs.gov if you want to apply for those. But if you go on usajobs.gov right now, you'll see this banner. It's like a warning. It's basically telling you to make sure that your resume is in a 2-page format. It cannot be any longer than 2 pages. So we're going to look at that right now. All right. So what you will see is essentially on usajobs.gov, this is my own page, you see this yellow box. It says, starting on September 27th, agencies will only accept resumes up to 2 pages in length. Okay, so then when you click sign in or learn more about this requirement, you're taken to this page right here. So this page, it shows you how to check your resume if you have one currently uploaded on usajobs.gov. We're going to get into that. I'm going to show you exactly step by step, but let's look down so we can get into the nitty-gritty on what is accepted, what is not accepted. It's pretty much the same stuff, right? What's required? A contact information. This is huge. Your phone number, email address, relevant work experience. This is another big part that a lot of people mess up. They do not put the month in year and number of hours worked per position. You need to make sure that you're doing that. Education, if the job announcement requires any education. The majority of government jobs, they do not require any education. So do you include it if you have space? What you're going to find out is space comes at a premium. This is like premium real estate. Now that you're confined to 2 pages, you can't just put things all over the place. It has to make sense. Next, what else can you include? It says you may need to, you might need to provide your security clearance, job-related training, etc., references. Now, with mine, I took references out. Man, if you include references on your resume, if you use the resume builder, that's like 1/3 of the page. So that's just space that you cannot afford to give up. If you're selected, HR will contact you about the references. You don't necessarily need to include them unless the job announcement is asking you to. What should you not include? Your social security number, photos of yourself. Okay, this is why I have a hard time with individuals that they put their LinkedIn profile, they put the address to their LinkedIn page, and as soon as you click it, you see a nice, big, beautiful picture of them, and that could disqualify you as well. Some HR, they're cool with it. Others are not. I just wouldn't do it. Anything that shows your religious affiliation, same thing. I wouldn't do it. Okay, so now I'm going to go to usajobs.gov. You see here, I'm going to go to documents and I'm going to go to one of my resumes. This is on the resume builder. If you click more and then you click view and then you click print, it's going to show you this is 2 pages. So we're good to go. Green light, thumbs up. We're good to go with this resume. Now, a lot of people have a lot of words up top, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about and how to get rid of it. So if you go back to usajobs.gov and you hit search preferences and you go down here and you go to appointment type, some people have this filled out. It's optional, but if you add preferences, like what do you want to do? Permanent, detail, summer, term, like all this extra stuff, internship, I want full-time work, I want shift work, right? If you do that and you save it, let's look at the resume now. The resume is going to blow 2 pages. It's not going to be 2 pages anymore. It's going to be 3 pages. So when we view it, we hit print resume. You see how it jumped to 3 pages up in the upper right-hand corner? Because, let me zoom this in so that you guys can see it a little bit better. That's not letting me do it. Okay, do you see this portion? Let me get rid of that. Right here where it says availability, it just took like 4 inches of my resume. And this is not important. In my opinion, this is not important. Get rid of that. Go to your, now it's too big. Go to your search preferences, go to your appointment type and uncheck these boxes. If you want more space on your resume, uncheck all of these boxes. Okay. And then save it. The same could be said when you're talking about, what is it? Travel and relocation. So if you go down here and you start typing in, I want to work in Arlington, Virginia, or Washington, D.C., or Chicago, Illinois, it's going to add a section on your resume. It's going to make your resume longer. And you don't want that. Now, what I found when looking at the resume on the resume builder, at least, I found that if you include your last 3 positions, you're looking at maybe 4 bullets per position. So you can got 1, 2, 3, you have 4 there. Now, I would have your heavy hitters on the first page. And then your oldest position, probably you don't have to really go into detail that much unless it's relevant. But I took out the references. I took out some of the education relevant coursework. I took out some of the military service awards. I took out some of the achievements that weren't as relevant to the position. I did all of that to get it down to 2 pages. And it's going to take some effort. It's going to take some time to whittle it down to that 2-page requirement. So it really comes into play with what position you're targeting. So if you're applying to a job announcement, let's say it's in the 1700 series, so they want you to showcase experience about presenting information to an audience, you're instructing an audience, then you're not going to talk too much about spreadsheets. You're not going to talk too much about databases, because your achievements need to be rooted in what's relevant for that position. And that's what you're going to showcase. It's hard to select. If you have some beautiful achievement bullets, like you have a dozen of them, they're beautiful. You have to kill some of them. And it's difficult to do that. But if you find yourself as wanting to jump agencies or jump positions within your agency, and you want to be competitive, this is it. This is the 2-page requirement. You have to pick the best achievements. And really, once you get it down, it ultimately ends up being less work for you as the applicant and less work for HR as they're reviewing it. This is what is supposed to help take the federal government hiring process from 100 days last year down to 80 days or less, 80 days being the standard for this year. Now, some positions, that's just impossible, but it's good to have goals, okay? Now, this is what I recommend for a lot of individuals that are considering either getting a federal government job for the first time or maybe trying to look for another job series that might be a better fit for them. Take your resume. I'm going to do this on screen. Take your resume. Okay. Like this is my old resume. So take it, copy it. This is like the short version. Go to ChatGPT and say, please see my resume and identify the top 5 job series that I can be competitive for. And then paste it. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. You can pick your AI of choice. I'm just using it because everyone's familiar with ChatGPT, or you should be. Please see my resume. Identify the top 5. Let me put federal government job series that I am. Let's put I am competitive for, and then I'm just going to paste it right after that statement. I'm going to Control V and just paste that thing in there, and let's see what it comes up with. Okay. So number 1 is 0343, which they knocked it out of the park. That's essentially the last 2 positions were 0343. It also mentions IT, and it tells you why it mentions that. It says that it's because of database administration, PIAs, the security audits. It aligns with 2210. It says 0340, program management. I was an ROTC instructor. So it pulled that from my resume, and it's giving me an indication that I could be competitive with 0340. 0301 and then 0346, which is secondary but viable. So you can see here, just from my short 2-page resume that I copied and pasted into AI, it's generating ideas. And you can even go further, like it says 0346, secondary. So you could say, what skills or experience can I attain or improve to be a better fit for 0346. And then The same thing here. It's going to tell you exactly what you need to emphasize or skills you need to attain in order to be more competitive. Like with transportation and planning, I can look in my past and say, actually, you know what? There's many times that I was involved in this. I'm just not showcasing it on my resume. So I have to go back and make the tweaks. And now potentially I could be more competitive for 0346, right? Something that you might want to consider as we get closer to the hiring freeze potentially ending. Okay, let me take that down. All right, let's go ahead and jump into some of the previously submitted questions and see what we got. So the first one is coming from Gaffab. And okay, what have you heard the unions are going to do to fight the cancellation of agreed to legally binding bargaining unit contracts and agreements? The unions are failing at every turn. If they don't start winning in the courts, why would anyone pay union dues any longer? So lawsuits have been filed. Unions still need court victories. I think there's at least 3 major, probably more cases that are pending in the legal system. And you're absolutely correct. They need to start winning. As a person paying union dues, you have to ask yourself, do I believe that the union is fighting in my best interest? Or is the union not being transparent? Are they not being transparent, or have I lost trust and confidence for them to represent me? So it's a personal decision whether or not you want to do it. And in a lot of agencies, they've terminated the collective bargaining agreement. So that could play into consideration as well. But yeah, good question. Next question is from USN Accountant. For those of us as first-line supervisors in the federal service, what are some key team building activities we can implement? My team is spread across the country from California to Virginia. I'm a supervisor. I have 5 direct reports. Okay, so first off, what your people want, they want their time back. They want you to approve situational telework. They want 59 minutes is what they want. If you want to build a team, though, generally speaking, you want people to be more comfortable with one another. You want people to be interacting. When I feel comfortable with you, I'm willing to ask you a favor. Hey, can you help me out? I don't understand this system. You got 5 minutes? Do you have 10 minutes? If there's no rapport there, it's harder to have those conversations. So I wouldn't create any new meetings. We don't need new meetings, but whatever you have already laid out on the calendar, I would try to allocate a small amount of time in order to fostering those connections, people sharing what they're doing in the office, sharing achievements and things like that. Like, hey, these are my big wins of the month, of the quarter. And when people take an interest in others, that's when you start to build the team. So difficult, easier said than done, but good question. All right, next question. Magnet AR asks, as far as out-of-state workers that work in the Department of Defense, is the policy all the same for all the branches of service that they must be in the DoD building, or is it at the individual discretion? No, it's absolutely not at individual discretion. So DoD implemented a return to work mandate. That was January 20th, and then they had another memo that came out January 24th, and then I think in January 31st. So this applies to all DoD civilians in all branches. Now, in some agencies, as I'm speaking to you right now, they are allowing some telework. I don't know if they're supposed to. I just know that it is happening, whether that be 1 or 2 days a week. And I don't know if their time cards are reflecting that, but I have heard in multiple agencies that some offices have started to allow a little bit of telework. I don't want to really say too much more than that. Okay, let's get into some of the comments. What do we got? We got Valoya Smith. She asked, do you think there will be a government shutdown? I think there potentially could. You know, really with these government shutdown questions, it's 50-50, right? There's no telling. I can see a lot of good reasons why there would be one, and I can see a lot of good reasons on why there would not be one. If there is one, I don't think it would be very long. I think it would be kind of short-lived, but it could be used as, like a political bargaining strategy in order to get more out of one side or the other. So I really don't know. I made a video, I think last month, talking about it, where I was leaning more towards there potentially being a government shutdown, but right now I'm pretty neutral. Okay, this is a resume question. Matthew J. Number of hours worked per week need to be included. Yeah, your number of hours of work per week need to be included because they're trying to find out what HR is typically looking for is that you have 12 months of specialized experience in the next lower grade. So if you're applying for a GS13, they're looking for 12 months of experience as a GS12. If you're only working 20 hours a week, that's not really the full 12 months. That's more like 6 months of full-time experience. So the number of hours that you work per week indicates whether it's full-time or it's part-time, and they're using that in order to make a determination if you have enough time. If you have enough time when it comes to the specialized experience is why it's very important to input the hours. But that's the way it's been. It's been that way. Before this year, it was always that way, but some people fail to put it on there. Now, I'm going to tell you, some people actually, they get referred and they get hired without doing it. But it has been a requirement. It is a requirement, and I think it's in your best interest if you include it. Okay. Hey, Parlor. Good morning. Walter, what about the old profile section? Yeah, so with these 3 questions, what about the job series? If you are currently holding a federal job, a federal government job, input the job series there. And then also there's a section where you input the schedule. So, or the pay grade that you're under, like GS, whatever GS grade, or it may be your GG or NH, whatever the pay grade is. And then the salary, it says optional, but I usually include it just to be fully transparent. I don't see why not. If you put that you're a GS12, they have an idea of your salary range, especially if you have your location listed there. So why not? Why not include it? I would. Okay, let's go to some questions. What other questions do we have? Yep. Okay, so we have a question. Do you think the hiring freeze will finally lift in October? So the hiring freeze has been extended to October 15th. So we had the initial hiring freeze. Then we had one extension. Now we're on the second extension. Currently, it is the longest continuous hiring freeze in federal government history, as far as I'm aware. Then, okay, so what happens next? Does the Trump administration extend it again? Does it get extended so that throughout the entire calendar year, potentially there is no hiring? A lot of people think so. And for me, I don't think it will. But to be fair, I didn't think it would get extended last time. I believe that federal agencies, I know without a shadow of a doubt, that the workload has increased. You had over 10% of the federal government gone. And in some offices, the numbers are worse than that. In some offices, you're looking at 30, 35, 40%. Some offices have dissolved completely. So if you're in leadership, you are responsible for the success or failure for your organization. If you understand that there's an increase in workload, the burnout rate is getting higher, the attrition rate is getting higher because some people don't have to do it. People that have options that are not dependent on their federal government job, they can easily pivot. I'm talking mainly to IT, medical, engineering. They can pivot and they're going to leave. You know, you're paying them the same amount and you increase their workload by 60%. That's a good incentive to leave, right? I mean, that's a really good incentive to pack your bags and look for a better job. So the leadership of the agency, I believe they want to hire. And then you have the 1 to 4 rule that's supposed to come into effect as soon as the hiring freeze lifts. You're only allowed to hire 1 individual for every 4 that leave. Well, what does leaving mean? Leaving means quit, terminated, die. If a federal employee passes away from natural causes, and this happened, over 100 people, you know, consider the federal workforce close to 2 million. Over 100 people are dying. So they're passing away, they're retiring, they're quitting, they're getting terminated, they're going to different positions. So that's happening on an ongoing basis. You're losing more and more individuals. I believe as a leader that you want that pain to end. So you want the hiring freeze to end. Now, even though we're in a hiring freeze right now, if you go to usajobs.gov, you know, just yesterday, there was close to 7,000 open jobs to the public and way more than that for federal employees to move around. And that means ICE is hiring, sub-agencies of the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Defense, to include Department of Army, Department of Navy, they're all hiring. Veteran Affairs, they're hiring. HHS, they're hiring. So there's a lot of positions that are still hiring. And some people ask me, like, what do you think about the 1 to 4? How's the 1 to 4 going to slow down staffing up these agencies? And I look first to the exemptions. What exempts an agency from hiring people when it comes to the 1 to 4 rule? One of the exemptions is national security. And I'm looking, DOD, public safety. I'm looking at, the Bureau of Land Management, and then law enforcement and immigration. So those are the exemptions. Now tell me this. You have the Trump administration that's saying these agencies can no longer have collective bargaining agreements with unions. Why? Because of national security. So if the federal agencies can no longer have collective bargaining agreements with unions because of national security, and national security is one of the exemptions to get around the 1 to 4 hiring rule, doesn't it just make sense that the agency would leverage that and say, well, these positions are now technically they're categorized as national security, so we don't have to abide by the 1 to 4 rule. Now, some positions might need to be reclassified, and that's a whole nother process. But I could easily see something like that happening. But we'll have to check that out. Okay, let's see. Let's see if we got any more questions. Question, Bill Murray. Bill Murray, why are the GS and GG salary bands so much lower than the private sector? How can the government expect to attract top-tier talent, specifically in IT and cyber and high cost of living areas? There's over 50 pay charts. In higher cost areas, the pay is actually higher. So a GS-14 in Oklahoma gets paid a lot less than a GS-14 in San Francisco. Probably by 30, 35%, 40%. So if you're saying, why are they so much lower? It depends on what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to an IT help desk person, then the government is probably paying you more. And if you're comparing it to an administrative type role, then the government's probably paying more. But if you're specifically looking at highly desired, sought after skills, you talk about software engineering, there's a real interesting paradox with software engineering. It just so happens that software engineers are twice as likely to lean to the left, have a Democratic left-leaning ideology. So they're probably less likely incentivized to work under this administration. And that's why I think what you see with software engineering is that's largely a contracting function. It's not too often that within federal agencies, you will see a large office that's dedicated to software engineering in the most traditional of senses, like you're actually engineering, you're actually programming. That's typically outsourced to contractors. Now, that's a problem. I think that's a problem. But if you're pro-privatizing everything, then that's not a problem. It depends on where you stand on that issue. But you have some agencies that pay higher than GS and GG. If you look at the FAA, they pay over $200K for some of their positions because they're coded differently. They're under the accepted service too, I believe. Then there's positions in the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, or the FDIC. They pay higher than the GS. And then there's positions in the VA when it comes to attracting medical talent. They pay higher than the GS. So the federal government's not all GS and GG. But if you're directly comparing a person like a software engineer, cybersecurity professional, artificial intelligence specialist, those type of positions, yeah, you're probably always going to get paid a premium when it comes to the private sector. I was looking at the news the other day and I saw that what was it, Meta? Was it Meta or OpenAI? They were paying like over $1 million to entice somebody to work for that organization. That's kind of when you know that your skill set is really valued, is when the 7-figure amounts start coming out. We start talking about millions of dollars to join an organization. Yeah, the federal government's not going to be that place. It's not. So if you have highly sought after talent or really hard to get talent, you're going to be rewarded more in the private sector. Now, I believe the VA also tried to put an SSR, a special salary rate for some of their IT folks, or it's probably HR. But special salary rate exists as well, but it can't exceed GS-15 Step 10. So once again, you're limited. You're limited to, what is it, 196, 197, just under 200,000. And of course, all that's really taxed. Okay, good question. Next, Angelica, we got a link to apply to volunteer with FEMA. Do you know anything about this? I don't know anything specifically about that, but I do know that periodically FEMA does look for other federal employees to be detailed to them for a period of time. I read something recently that said that FEMA was under a hiring freeze for the rest of the year. We know the Trump administration doesn't like FEMA as an organization. There's a lot of politician. There's a lot of political support to put the emergency response back at the state level and just provide federal funds for the state to independently manage it. So it doesn't surprise me that they're short staffed right now. Yeah. Are you going to do it? I guess that's the next question. Do you feel like volunteering for FEMA? We also have people volunteering for ICE, Immigration Custom Enforcement. They've been sending those emails out as well. Okay, GYTU. Does the president have to write an official letter by August 31st? So today, that states federal workers will not receive any kind of raise. If he doesn't present the letter, the federal employees will still get a raise. No. So the president doesn't want federal workers to receive a pay raise. Well, first and foremost, we know that's a pay decrease because of inflation. So he wants the federal workforce to have less buying power next year. This is not a new stance. He took this stance, I think, at least 3 times during his first term. So what could end up happening is Congress could get involved and still give us a raise. But since Congress right now, both houses lean to the right, that's probably not going to happen. It'll be really surprising if it does. But typically speaking, in December is when we'll find out, for certain whether or not we get a raise. We're not getting a raise. I'd be shocked if we get a raise. I don't think we're going to get a raise. I don't think there's congressional support for it. Now, next year is a different story because we have the midterm elections, and they might, when I say they, I mean the GOP, they might be more willing to compromise. They might want to seem more amicable or rational. I don't know. That's just wild speculation, but I wouldn't count on a raise. All right, let's see if we got any other questions. Yep. All right, next one is Yo, who asks, is there any chance to privatize departments or agencies? And is there a chance that VA increases with upcoming regional wars? So I don't see the U.S. getting involved in any regional wars. Hopefully not. We are sending money to different countries. We are politically taking sides in different conflicts. But I don't think there's public appetite to put American boots on the soil, so to speak. And I hope not. I really would hate to see anything like that happening. But when it comes to privatizing, so the top agencies I could see political support and trying to make something happen. We know the VA has been talked about when it comes to privatizing the VA, right? The other one is the Postal Service, the USPS. They're losing billions of dollars each and every year, a lot of money. There's a lot of talk about privatizing that. The TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. So before 9/11, that was given to the private sector. I think there was 2 or 3 main security companies that won that contract, and they would take care of it. I know a lot of people want to see it return back to that. And then maybe the SSA. It's really hard to make heads or tails of the SSA because there's so many problems that are being exposed. There's so many issues being exposed this year. They're at an all-time low when it comes to their workforce. There's barely 50,000 people there. Their workload has increased. They were already suffering from burnout in 2023. In 2024, the agency was suffering, and they just got hit with like a 20% reduction. So that agency is going to have some problems. And with problems comes people with brand new solutions saying, well, why don't we privatize this part of it and this part of it? And look what we can do over here. So I can see, some momentum perhaps when it comes to trying to privatize those agencies. And then, Ed already, education department's a shadow of its former self. Okay, next is from GoMC, who asks, I'm DOD and we haven't been offered DRP-3. Where can I get that information? So you need to just, check with your human resource representative. You got to check HR to find out about your DRP status. I believe the Department of Army, they were the ones that were offered DRP3. Also the EPA, they were offered DRP. And with those, the Deferred Resignation Program, I've been hearing those go out until the end of the year. So December 31st, you would be placed on administrative leave. Starting in 2026, any agency that decides to use the DRP as an incentive to reduce their workforce, they're only going to be able to put people, I believe it was 3 months. I'm going to have to double check. I think it's only 3 months though. So compare that with this year where DRP 1, we had people that were actually on administrative leave for 7 months. They're still on administrative leave until the end of next month. So that's not going to be happening anymore. Those people probably got the best deal. Next month, they're reducing it. That came out with the new guidance when it comes to administrative leave. They want to make it just 1 day, ideally, except for restructuring purposes. I think it can go out for 3 months, or what is that, 12 weeks? Something like that. So I haven't heard anything DOD like the entirety. Even when DOD had DRP, it wasn't for everybody. Just like when the VA had it, it wasn't for everybody. The highly specialized individuals that had face-to-face contact with veterans, they couldn't accept it. There was a lot of people that wanted to accept it. In fact, in the FAA, I believe there were some air traffic controllers trying to take it, and they were told, no, sorry, you can't do it, for obvious safety reasons. So, yep. Next is B1. B1 asks, what are land and base management? Why do they get the special treatment of being able to apply to almost any job openings? So when you're talking about land management, managing the land is for public safety. If you don't manage the land, if you don't have people working on land management, it could be a safety risk for the public. So I believe that's why you have positions over there that are exempt from the hiring freeze. And really, you're talking about the agencies of Bureau of Land Management, Indian Affairs, Reclamation, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Then you got the National Park Service, Forest Service, and then the Corps of Engineers. So you have that. And then also those positions, really, if you think about it, a lot of them are temporary. So those guys, they're like seasonal. That's why there's a preference for them. If they're trying to actually be a permanent federal employee and you're seasonal, there's a preference for land management. Okay, next, same guy, different question. Why are all FAA jobs accepted service with their own pay bands? What are the advantages, disadvantages of accepted service? Would these jobs be safe given their hiring even with a freeze? Yeah, that's an indicator, right? So if they're hiring and there's a hiring freeze, they're probably safer than most. And you're looking for like a mission essential or critical position. The advantages of accepted service, generally speaking, they're supposed to be faster hiring. They don't have to be on usajobs.gov. So you can get a lot of these positions a different way. You don't have to come through the front door, so to speak. usajobs.gov is the front door. You don't necessarily have to come through the front door. If you have veterans preference, Schedule A, then you can bypass it. There's some positions I know of where the hiring manager just asks people to send resumes. So there's a meeting and the hiring manager is like, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but we have a position opened up for 0340. And if you know anybody who's a good fit, just email me their resume. So you just bypass usajobs.gov altogether. A disadvantage, though, I would say is you have less job mobility. So if you're in the competitive service, you can hop around like a bunny rabbit. You could just bounce, different agencies. I'm in Department of Justice today, and tomorrow I'm in the Department of Agriculture, and the very next day I'm at the Department of Housing. You could just hop around. If you're in the accepted service, you cannot always apply to a competitive service job. Some of them are just open for competitive service, and that's kind of where the intra-service agreements, I'm saying the word wrong, but basically the agreements that you have. So, for example, USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, they have an agreement where they can apply for certain competitive service jobs. And this all comes back to reading the entire job announcement. So, more mobility with the competitive service, faster hiring, and you don't have to come through the front door with the accepted service. That's one way to look at it. What else? Let's see if we got any questions. Oh, wait. I didn't talk about FAA. Let me talk about FAA really quick. So FAA has their own pay band, just like we were talking about earlier. The SEC has their own pay band. The FDIC has their own pay band. Nurses in the VA have their own pay band. They have their own pay band because they're able to offer more money. So an air traffic controller, they can pay over $200,000 a year. And you would want to do that to retain them, right? So they don't just wander off and do something else. So that's what it's for. It's more flexible to offer higher pay to attract and retain individuals, I would say. And then NH, that's common in the DoD, in the Department of Defense. NH has the benefit of being able to have larger bonuses. And that's another thing that we're going to be looking at this year, next year. The Trump administration wants to make larger bonuses to less people. So not everybody gets a bonus, not even half of the office, a select like 10, 20%, going to be different in every office. And then hopefully they get larger bonuses. Okay, let's see what we got. Give me a second really quick. We have Tina. I work for the Air Force as a civilian. My organization allows situational telework, but not regular reoccurring. Okay, yeah. So if you got something going on this week, or maybe something going on this month, you talk with your supervisor, you work it out, you can make it happen. That's better than taking sick leave or taking annual leave. Chris, I was terminated from the VA on February 13th. Poor performer. Hired back March 18th. Took the DRP, and then on May 22nd, denied for staffing levels. How is that even legal? What do you mean that you were denied for staffing levels? I don't think I understand that. Did you have a follow-on message? So you were terminated probably because you were I'm guessing you were on probation because they were terminating everybody with the copy and paste. You're a poor performer. So maybe you got that thing. You were hired back. Okay, took the DRP. So the DRP you should have been good until the end of September. But then in May, you were denied. Denied what? Denied the DRP? Interesting. I don't know how that's legal. Okay. Let's take a quick look at USA Jobs, see what we got going on over there. Where is it? There it is. All right. I took a peek last week, and then we had like 6,800 jobs there. We still have over 6,000. We got close to 10,000 jobs for federal workers. Now, the three big ones that we all know are currently hiring include ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, CBP, Customs Border Protection, and of course, BOP, the Bureau of Prisons. This is the year to be a correctional worker because they desperately need correctional workers, especially with all their ambitious plans to open prisons. If you look at the events, let's go here. If you go to usajobs.gov and you click events, you can see the top events. If you look through here, the very first one, this is in 2 days. So this is on Tuesday. You got Federal Bureau of Prisons. They're doing a hiring event. If you look over here, Pennsylvania, who is it? The Federal Bureau of Prisons. It's the Federal Correctional Institute. They're doing open house direct hire. They're trying to get correctional officers as fast as they can get them. The same thing with ICE, the same thing with CBP. Now, here's something a little bit different. You got a webinar for electrical engineers. This is for FEMA. Now, FEMA is not supposed to be hiring, so I don't know what's going on with this job. Let's take a look at it. That's a LinkedIn. Oh, they're hiring off of LinkedIn. Okay. Then we have the IRS. The IRS is a real interesting situation if you heard about it. IRS was one of the first agencies that said they were not going to hire anybody, not one person in the calendar year of 2025. It wasn't going to happen because they were too big and they had to get rid of all those thousands of people that were hired under President Biden. But then what happened just a few weeks ago is the Trump administration said they need to hire more contact representatives. And if they do not, then the public was going to experience difficulties for the upcoming tax season. So they're hiring. You can see that right here. And this is one of the examples of, you thought that you could really whittle away at an agency without the consideration that it has a public service component that is actually a requirement. Same thing with HHS. The same thing was done over at HHS, right? They thought they could, they thought they had way too many people. And they just cut almost arbitrarily. It seemed like almost randomly, they just cut. Then they're like, oh, wait, everybody, we need you to come back in. So this one is in Tennessee. They're hiring. They have been given the authority to hire contact representatives. Thousands. They want thousands. Now, these are low-paying positions. These are not high-paying positions. And most of them are seasonal, which isn't going to work for. This doesn't work for somebody who wants to make a legitimate career. This is somebody who's looking to pass the time or trying to get a little bit of experience here and there. That's what this is. Because if we look at it, you see right here, okay, seasonal direct hire. They want them quick, but they don't want to give them, they don't want to give them any longevity. This is the salary that they're paying. $19 to $25 an hour, GS5. But look at those vacancies. Do you see that? I'm going to zoom it up a little bit. Look at those vacancies, man. You got almost 300 vacancies to take a GS5. Low-paying position, right? My God. Oh, you got promotion potential to 8, though. So what is this going to be? This is going to be for the tax season. It says entry level. This is for our call site. So you're going to be in a call center answering the phone, and people are going to be fired up about their taxes. That's what this is. And unfortunately, the same thing when it comes to correctional officers. So what that's 0007. So if you look over here, 0007, these guys aren't paid that much either, unfortunately. Man, they have a really dangerous job. That's a probation officer. Let's look at the correctional. Okay, correctional officer. This is nationwide. Okay, well, this is better than the IRS call contact representative. But you have to understand you're putting yourself in a dangerous situation. You start off at 59 and it goes up to 94. But this, they say it's nationwide, but they mentioned California. And California is a very high cost area. So these are the main things. These are the main jobs that are hiring right now. I see it changing, though. Definitely when the hiring freeze is lifted, you'll see a lot more agencies hiring, because we can look right here and just kind of check out who's hiring right now. So I'm surprised Department of Agriculture. You got over 100 Department of Agriculture. But when you're looking at DOD, you got 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And then there's one more. 4, 5. So you got 5,000. Just DOD alone is 5,000. And then Commerce is 86. Department of Energy is almost nobody. The Office of the President, they want to hire 4 people. HHS, this has been about the norm the last few months. They've still been hiring, especially medical officers, 0600 series. DHS is hiring. This is mainly CBP and ICE, Border Patrol. This is your land management, DOI, Department of Interior. DOJ, this is like special agents. More than likely, it's going to be FBI, ATF, legislative branch, sure. Department of State, man, Marco Rubio is really shrinking the Department of State. We'll see how that goes. And then IRS, you got 35 positions at the Department of Treasury. And then Department of Transportation is mainly going to be FAA. The big 2 opportunities really is DOD and the VA. Those are the 2 big opportunities. And a lot of they lean heavy on the veterans. DOD has more veterans, I want to say, especially in the Department of Air Force. They're like 56% of their workforce are veterans. The VA is closer to like around 30 something, 35, 40 maybe. So if you don't have veterans preference, you could be on the back foot unless you're a medical officer, and then you'll be fine. Let's see what else we got. Let me take that down. Okay, Chris Ford kind of elaborates on the situation. He was terminated, accepted service, denied the DRP. So you were denied the deferred resignation program because of staffing levels. That was the reasoning. I work in a 1 deep office. Yeah, the best thing, you're already terminated. So hopefully you still have that letter. You had that letter. You can share that letter and see. I know one individual, it wasn't in your situation, but basically they were laid off. So they had a RIF, a reduction in force, but they were not given that much time. I think they were given like a 2-week notice. You're supposed to have 60-day notice for a reduction in force. Now, OPM was given the authority to grant 30-day exemptions. So as long as you had 30 days, in some situations, the agency could still lay you off. But in this individual, I think he had 2 weeks. So he filed a complaint with the SMPB, and they actually gave him the money. They made up the money. So let's use for an example, they give you 1 month, but they were supposed to give you 2 months. So they settle it with you by giving you an extra month of pay, and then they close the case out. So that kind of stuff happens. Now, most people would rather have like a class action lawsuit. That's going to take way longer, but the settlement will probably be better if it goes in your favor. But that could be an option. The MSPBs are always an option, but it's just kind of bogged down. There's so many people going through there right now. It could be challenging. Bill Murray, been a government contractor for 10 years and work in IT as a director. I'd love to work for the DoD, but the salaries are too low compared to the cost of living. The complexity is ridiculous. Why? The federal government doesn't have the authority to, it's so bureaucratic. You have an office that's desperately in need of talent, but they have to report to their executive, and they report to the office above them, and it has to go through the DoD secretary. OPM has to be okay with it. So many things have to happen in order for them to actually provide a lucrative incentive. Now, if you want to work at the DoD, they have what they call, the Cyber Acceptance Service, the CES. Now, I believe for some of those positions, there might be bonuses attached, but you have to do so many years. It still might not be worth it, depending on what your competing offers are. If the private sector is already paying you 30, 40, 50% more, then there's nothing the federal government's going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to match it. It's not going to come close to that. They're restricted to the GS pay scale. Now, eventually they might have to do what other agencies are doing. It's going to come down to when they're unable to attract that level of talent. So if they need cybersecurity professionals and they can't attract them, they're going to be looking for ways to do that. So there's going to be more and more incentives. It's all going to take time, though. I don't think it's going to happen this year. Maybe next year, depending on how much they're hurting. Change only comes with pain. You don't have change unless there's pain, right? So the organization is experiencing pain, and then there's the desire and the momentum to actually change it. But unfortunately, they're going to be missing out on talent. Okay, Tony, I did that for the VA. Started as a 5, now I'm an 11. 11 still doesn't get paid. The federal government, you have over 300 jobs. So GS11 might be okay for an administrative specialist, but it's not okay for an IT project manager. It's just not okay. It's too low. That, especially in some of these areas, is way too low. It's what makes people jump back into the private sector. We're back to starting to hire more as a call representative in my call area. Tony, are you in the IRS? No, you're in the VA. Okay. So yeah, the VA has their call center too. 6 call centers, VHA. Okay. Empress Queen. When they returned to office our agency allowed us to be liberal with leave to accommodate arrangements for childcare. Being that they violated our collective bargaining agreement, could we ever file grievances to get our time back? You can file a grievance, but I don't know where that will go. Are you in one of the agencies that have completely terminated their collective bargaining agreement? Because if that's the case, that might be your answer right there. But if you're in a federal agency that still has a collective bargaining agreement, obviously you want to document everything, talk to a union representative, and see what you could do moving forward. It's been all over the place when it comes to return to office. Like I was mentioning earlier, some people are actually, their supervisors are okay with them teleworking, and it may or may not be captured on the time card as long as there's an understanding. How is your supervisor? How is your office culture? But really, they take guidance from above. So how is the SES? What type of pressure are they under? There's people that are using what FLMA. In some situations, people are using their sick leave, people are using their annual leave. And then in some cases, they just run out. They run out. They can either borrow leave from someone else can give them leave, or they can come to an agreement. And I think really it comes down to your relationship with your supervisor and what type of worker are you. And that's really going to dictate what type of freedoms you're going to be allowed to take. Yeah, hey, DKT, it is tough to get your resume under 2 pages, but I showed you just a second ago how I did it. Let me see if I can bring mine up again. So check this out. You can only keep the gold nuggets. So if you picture your resume like gold, silver, and bronze, like you got some silver nuggets, you got some bronze nuggets, you just want to keep the golden nuggets. And that means you might have to get rid of some of the really good stuff, but that's okay. Because that's the standard. You have to meet it. Sign in. I was just signed in. All right, hold on. They should be able to sign me in with no issue. Okay. So the resume, I'm going to show you the full resume. Let me download this thing. My resume was like 6 pages or 5 pages. I think it's 5 pages. So this is 5 pages, right? So 1 page. No, this is 6 pages. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My God, 7 pages. Okay. I have a version of my resume that was 7 pages. Now you got to keep in mind, I have over 25 years of work experience. But I don't include all 25 years. But yeah, 25 years. And then this is this is the 2-pager. So 1 page, 2 page. And I just kept like the achievements that are directly related to most of the job series I would apply for. I made it related to that, so I'll show you. This is it. So you want to try to quantify it, lead with, you still want to lead with the strong verbs from the specialized experience section. You want to definitely lead with that. You want to capture any type of achievement that you have that's relevant to what the job announcement is asking for. So you keep that, right? But I got rid of a lot of achievements. I had way more achievements in there. But if it is quantified, if it is representing an achievement where there is a clear outcome, like let's say you earn a certification or you earn a performance award, a cash bonus, a time off award, and what you did is related to the job that you're applying for, you want to make sure you include that. Now, what I got rid of the references. I got rid of a lot of the military service, extra stuff back there. I got rid of everything up top. So up top, you have the preferences. Like if you look on usajobs.gov, there are sections where it adds to the top portion. You don't want to do that. Now, this is Resume Builder. What I prefer is actually creating your own resume because you have more control over the format. And some job announcements, they're going to have, they're going to clearly tell you, hey, I want you to be this font. I want you to use this font. I want 1-inch margins. This is the font size. So you might have to follow that. And the best way that you're able to meet those standards is if you create your own resume. You could do it on Google Docs and then convert it to a PDF and then upload the PDF to usajobs.gov. But when you hit print preview, you want to make sure it's only 2 pages. I don't think there's going to be very much leniency on that. It could get to the situation. It could get to the point where you have 2 pages and 2 sentences on the 3rd page. So either 1, they could disregard it because you failed to follow instructions, or 2, they will not consider anything below the 2nd page. Now, previously, I think like DOD and Department of Homeland Security, they were looking at your first 5 pages. And if you had a 6th page, they just wouldn't look at the 6th page. They would pretend like the 6th page didn't exist. So it could be a situation like that, or they could receive guidance that say, hey, anybody who didn't follow instructions, just dismiss them, just reject them. Because hundreds of people are applying for these positions. A lot of these positions, you have so many people applying. You're looking for any way that you can whittle that number down to a reasonable amount. So it could be that too. But it is difficult. You have to start chopping. So first, I would chop like the stuff that doesn't matter. Like, let's say you have a bachelor's degree and 2 masters. Maybe get rid of one of the master's degree. Do you even need to have a master's degree? For some positions, it could be looked at favorably, but other positions, maybe not. So which one wins out in that situation? Do you want to showcase more of your achievements, or do you want to show that you have a graduate level degree? That's a decision that you have to make. More often than not, I believe a higher premium is placed on your experience, but everybody is going to be struggling on what experience to keep and what experience to let go of. And keep in mind, you're trying to get to the interview. So in the interview, when they're asking you questions, you can talk about all of your experience. It's not just whatever's on your resume. So have the resume situated that is very strong, very relevant, quantified, and that's trying to get you a ticket into the interview room. And then once you're interviewing, you unleash all of your glorious stories on the hiring manager. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, we were just talking about that, Walter. It is tough to keep a resume under 2 pages with the federal requirements if you have to take up lines for G. Yeah, that's true. You're already wasting lines on that. You're wasting lines on a lot of stuff, but there is some stuff within your control. So let's look at it again. Okay. Yeah, all this right here. Like, why am I went in there and I tried to get rid of my city, but it makes you put an address in there for the resume builder. You don't have to do that if you're building your own resume. But like this right here, like, okay, 40 hours a week, that's a line. 343, that's a line. GS, that's a line. Grade, that's a line. It's like, what are we doing? You're taking up so many of my lines. Same thing with references. If you decide to put references. Now, for education, I had in here, like, there's a section where notable achievement or relevant coursework. I had to get rid of that because it was taking too many lines. I'm like, my God, all my lines are going away. I rather have my achievements because everybody's going to, over half of the United States adults have degrees, right? And almost every federal employee is going to have all this taken up. The difference is this right here. This is the difference between you and the next individual. What is inputted here? Do you have the keywords? Are they related to the job series? What do your achievements look like? Your achievements have to be kind of wow. Like, wow, that guy did that. Led training development for 120 VA employees. Increased submission rate from 75 to 90%. Wow. Analyze spreadsheets. Wow. So drove a 90% success rate. 30-day capstone, top 50. Okay, all that stuff, right? So keep the pinnacle, the best of the best that you have. Try to keep that and whittle away at the rest of it. Okay. Where are you? Get rid of that. What else we had? Walter, the reason the IRS seems to go seasonal is they want the demand when it's peak, but they lay off people during the off season. Yeah, that makes sense. And they get limited benefits. Yeah. Walter, yep, limited on their permanent staff, which is the reason they think hiring was important. They have permanent staff listed, and it is delisted very swiftly. Yeah, if it wasn't for that, if they were not so concerned about what's happening in this upcoming tax season, they wouldn't have authorized it. The political climate is very anti-IRS from my perspective. I don't know what you've been seeing, but when I look at the headlines, when I hear the administration talk, it's very anti-IRS, it's anti most agencies, except for the agencies that enforce the law. So all federal workers that have a firearm. And it's not just law enforcement officers. If you look on usajobs.gov, you'll see that support positions also have been exempt. So you have ICE officers, but then you have a management analyst or a program analyst that supports that function, whether they keep track of the arrest or they have like the deportations being tracked in the database. So they do admin work. They're not out there arresting anybody. They don't carry a firearm. They're doing the clerical administrative, but they're supporting the immigration effort, or they're supporting the law enforcement effort by keeping track of the data. Those positions as well have been exempted. They have used the national security or the law enforcement category, and they have reassigned some of those positions under that category so they can still hire and they can still, keep those people without putting them on a RIF or anything. MV Will Rich, what's going on, Will Rich? Should you include the essay responses on your 2-page resume? Oh no, absolutely not. There's no space. If you have over 5 years of work experience, there's not going to be any space to put that in there. The questions, from what I have seen, have been completely optional. So this is the guidance, right? The guidance that I've heard is for the federal agency, it is not optional. They have to ask the questions. For the candidate, it is optional. They do not have to answer the questions, or however they answer them, it should not be the difference maker. It shouldn't be. I'm not saying it is or it isn't, or how people are going to view it in different agencies. Maybe it's going to hold a lot of weight depending on the agency that you're applying to. But I haven't heard anything that it needs to be in the resume. If anything, it would be treated more like a cover letter where you're answering the questions on a document and you're attaching it if the job announcement requires. So you always want to go to the document requirements section, and you're going to look. It might ask you to answer those questions. I was searching last week, and I only found a handful of positions that even brought it up. It could also be something where when you're filling out the questionnaire, when you're kind of like putting your eligibility and you're answering those questions, a self-assessment, it could ask you in there, because a lot of times there's these huge text boxes where you can input information. So they ask you a question like, where can we find this on your resume? Or describe an experience you have with evaluating data. And then you type it up in like an essay format. It could easily be something included in there as well. But I don't foresee it being part of the 2-page resume. My goodness, the 2-page resume, you're already not given that much space to explain. Like if you're a guy with 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience, and you want to clearly communicate like, hey, I'm that guy. I got the talent, I got the experience, got the ability, I have the skills. 2 pages, I mean, it's really limited on trying to communicate your value, especially if you have multiple decades of experience. So it's going to be difficult. Yeah, and that's exactly what Candy's saying here. Okay. Walter, what do I think the hiring managers and HR are going to assume? They're going to have to assume a lot, because in the past you were able to spell everything out. Like if they asked communications written. So if one of the requirements in the specialized experience was to communicate, and this individual needs to know how to communicate orally and through written, then you would have to actually put it in there. I'm proficient when with written. I wrote so many correspondence, or I updated the organization's policy on this, and you would actually describe it. And you're given a lot less space to do that, but you still need to hit those marks. It's just that in the past, you could be more thorough. You could provide more of a comprehensive account of your experience. And here, you're going to have to say it in a way that clearly, you still have to mention it. It's just you're not going to be able to provide as much context around the skill. So before, if one of the requirements was to analyze data, you could talk about you analyzed data on a SQL server, and then you were able to pull data, you were compare, contrast, and then you would formulate reports. You could give the whole story. And now really you're going to be given pretty much like 2 lines just to say that you've done it. I did it. I used this software. I attained this result. It's going to have to be a lot more concise. And when you're concise, a lot of times you lose that context. And if you lose the context, you have to make assumptions. So assumptions is going to come in more than people are willing to admit. But you still have to ensure that you're covering, the main thing that they're looking for. If they're looking for somebody who knows how to do budget formulation, you have to mention budget formulation. You just don't get into the entire story, but you mention that you've done it, and you mention the result that you were able to attain. Yeah, that's right, Candy. The resume is limited for personal resume and resume builder. It's 2 pages, and the exact words that they're using here is right here. Starting, it says they will only accept. So it doesn't say they will only consider it. They'll only accept resumes up to 2 pages in length. So if you go over 2 pages in 1 sentence, 2 pages in 2 sentences, or 2 lines, however you want to say it, they might not accept it. So you don't want to make that risk if you are looking. Get out of here. If you are looking. Okay. Walter says, we've had several of our contracts just abruptly canceled without notice or reasoning, making us run around with our heads cut off. I still have that up. Hold on. Let me take that down. Okay. Yep. So that's pretty much where we are at. Do we have any other questions? Any other questions? Hey, if you got a question, go ahead and drop it down. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this thing up early. Down below, there is resume templates that are currently, I believe they're in like 4 or 5 page format, but I'm going to reduce it down to 2 pages. It really comes down to how are you able to articulate your achievements in a clear, concise way that are relevant to the job announcement. Use AI as much as you can. Use AI to explore different job series that your experience matches. I talked about earlier, copy and pasting your resume to help for AI to explore other job series that you're eligible for. But you can do the same thing with performance evaluations. So if you have performance evaluations, let's say for the last 2 or 3 years, you can copy and paste, or you can just upload your performance evaluations and have AI scrub them, look through them, and pick out different job series that you're able to compete for. And that could help. I got a couple more, looks like, and then that'll be it. Let's see, what do we got? Brandon, I applied for a job before the hiring freeze, and the job announcement has not been canceled. Will HR still accept my longer resume once the freeze is off? So I would say any job announcement that closes before September 27th, you're probably going to be okay with. But from September 27th moving forward, that's the new requirement. And all agencies should be upholding that standard. So if you've already applied, the thing is, if you apply before the hiring freeze, they're probably going to discard that anyway. Because are you telling me you applied before January 20th? If you applied before January 20th, they're just going to issue a new job announcement 9 times out of 10. So you're going to have to reapply. Everybody, even if you don't even want to apply to federal jobs, you're like, what? Forget this. I'm never going to do it. I would still have a 2-page resume uploaded, make it searchable, click the button to make it searchable, and just leave it there. Okay. What else? Yeah. Candy, you can use AI. You can use AI. What you're not supposed to use AI for is when you're answering the assessment questions. So I've known people that when they get the email, after they apply for a job, they get the email and they're like, hey, you have to take these assessments. And you log in to take the assessments and you're given a certain amount of time. You are not morally, ethically supposed to use AI to answer the questions. But people have done it. People still do it. They use AI to help them. You're not supposed to use AI when you're doing your self-assessment. If they're asking you a question about something, you're not supposed to use AI. So it's all supposed to come organically from you. But when it comes to having someone assist you, I would use AI as that assistant. So put your experience out there. You're putting the final touches on it. So it's not going to be completely generated by AI, but AI will be assisting you. Just like in a lot of companies use AI to screen out candidates. They use AI for all kinds of reasons. And the use of AI within the federal government is going to increase. So as the candidate, as the individual worker, use the tools that you have around you to give yourself a better opportunity, a better shot at getting in. So I would definitely use it, but you want to do the final touches. Now, when I talked about AI earlier, I'm saying in order to explore what type of job series you could be eligible for. Because I see people that are 0343 or 0301, and they never want to apply to a different job series outside of what they know, even though they have the experience to apply to other job series. So in order to discover, like, hey, I have finance experience, maybe something in 0500. 0560 is a budget analyst. I've reviewed budgets before. So sometimes people need to brainstorm other ideas to see what other opportunities exist for them. So you would want to use AI for that as well. Camera Commando, if you don't put all the extra data references and only put your contact info and experience, will your resume be ignored if not following OPM standards? So OPM is saying in there, really, you take all guidance from the job announcement. If the job announcement says it's required, then you need to have it in there. But I'm going to show you. Let me put this up there. So this is the deal right here. This is what's required. Really 2 bullets. What is required is your contact information and your work experience to include your title, employer name, month and year, numbers of hours worked per week, and a description. These 2 are what's required every single time. It's saying education here if it requires, and most do not require. But go ahead and put that on there too, sure. So these 3 bullets, that's what's required. Now, the job announcement could say we want other stuff. What other stuff? It could ask for this other stuff. Security clearance, almost never. It almost never asks for that. Talking about it being on your resume. It might ask you the question when you're taking the assessment, but it's not going to. Most job announcements do not say you need to have your clearance on your resume. No. Job-related skills, almost never. Language skills, not unless you're applying to be, like a bilingual teacher or something, or maybe you're applying for State Department or whatever else. Organizations and affiliations, almost never, like 99% never. Professional publications, if you want to be a professor, maybe, but outside of that, almost never. References, almost never. Now, we talked about references. If they want your references, they'll ask you for your references. So what should you include? These 3 bullets. That's what you should include. And everything else, to me, is fluff, unless the job announcement calls for it. And once again, no photos of yourself. Don't talk about your religious affiliation, right? There's people that say, hey, I volunteered at this church, I volunteered at this mosque, and I was able to do this, and I led prayers for that, and that's probably not a good look for you. I understand that it was a rewarding experience, and it gave you some skills, but some people can be, biased towards that, so you don't want to include it, right? Okay. What else? Yeah, you're probably right, Walter. At some point, it might be proctored. You're like your tabs and your windows, but right now it's not. And there's just so many ways around it. Even if you are proctoring someone, what is to say that they don't have a monitor behind their webcam and they're able to look and see the answers, or they can just dictate it out loud, and there's just so many ways. As it gets more advanced, it's like a double-edged sword for everybody. What else? Okay, we have Tina. Does the 2-page requirement apply to direct hire authority positions? My organization has direct hire authority, and we don't post our 2210 positions. If you don't post your 2210 positions on usajobs.gov, they're probably in the accepted service. In the accepted service, you don't have to go through the same hiring procedure all the time. There's ways you can go around it. So that means there could be some wiggle room with it. But I would just tell everybody that is the standard starting September 27th. Moving forward, you want to have your resume 2 pages. And it's gonna be good, it's gonna be better for you because you spend less time updating it. And it's gonna be better for HR, it's gonna be better for the hiring process. So that's gonna be the new norm, at least for the next 3 years. It's gonna be 2 pages. So get your resume in the 2-page format. I can't say your name. Shalipa. For GS9 positions for internal candidates, requirements seem confusing. Time and grade, 52 weeks at GS8. Is that at federal level or from anywhere? That okay, what is it? Internal candidates? I would say that's from anywhere. If it's equivalent to GS8, it's going to get you in the door. Now you're internal, so my guess is in your situation, are you a GS7? Is that why it's confusing? Because you're a GS7 and you want to know if you meet the requirements to make GS9. If you're a GS7, you never went above GS7. You've been in the federal government these past few years and you're trying to apply for a GS9 internal and it's saying that you need GS8 specialized experience. That's probably not for you. That's probably for somebody else. Now, you can always clarify that with HR, or you can contact the individual at the bottom of the job announcement. But the main thing that's sticking out in my head is it's an internal position. So it's not like they're hiring somebody who's open to the public where you can substitute your experience and say, yeah, I was in the private sector, I was in the military. It was done at the level of GS8 and use that to be eligible for the 9. They might want you to have that 8, that experience as an 8. All right. Hey, tomorrow's Labor Day. What are you guys doing for Labor Day? I'm going to take the day off. Okay, yeah. Hey, I appreciate everybody spending some time with me today. Hopefully you're enjoying your Sunday. And let me know if you got any other questions. I'm going to give it probably about 15 seconds or so. And then I will say bye-bye. Man, this camera is like a filter. They have like a filter on me. All right. All right. Hey, appreciate everybody for being here. And you guys have a good one. Enjoy your day off tomorrow. Hopefully you have the day off. Enjoy yourself. I'll see you on the next live stream. Bye-bye.